Talking Ohio State football, of course, Rutgers 49-27 last week. Another would be or used to be a Big Ten doormat, Maryland on the horizon here on Saturday in College Park. And I'm going to extend on your stats there, Kevin. I was looking the other day in regards to, I do a stock market trends kind of look across the nation, and in looking at the Terps, they lost their average Big Ten loss last year in going 1-8. And of course, Rutgers being in a different category at that point. Maryland was able to beat Rutgers by 41 and then lose 8 other Big Ten games by an average of 38 points per game. What I got to credit Maryland with is that, okay, you go 3-9 last year, 1-8 in the Big Ten. You beat Rutgers. Other than that, you are getting trampled every week. Okay, you come back this year. You lose the first game by 40 points against Northwestern, and has been established, Northwestern doesn't beat anybody by 40 points. 50 years ago was the last time they beat a Big Ten opponent by 40 points. So coming off that last year, that in week 1, then you're down 17 in the fourth quarter. I don't know what the confidence level would be for any normal humans under those circumstances, facing what was supposed to be a good Minnesota team down by 17 after that run of 10 or 12 or 15 games or more. And they come back and win that Minnesota game. Then they go to Penn State, a team that beat them 59-0 last year and has beaten them 136-3 the last 3 years. And they go up there and trample Penn State, Tony.
It was pretty interesting. I got to the Ohio State press box last week, I think right as Maryland was going up 21-0, and I was pretty confused on how this is actually possible. But watching Talia Tagovailoa, like that dude, I was really impressed. I was more impressed than I expected to be in that Minnesota game. And I mean, he was running well, he was throwing well, and then he did the same thing again against Penn State. And they've got good receivers. They've got a number of receivers. They've got even Jake Funk running the ball is doing well. And then you see, like, you hear random names and you're like, I remember him in Ohio State recruiting circles, like Nick Cross, the safety. They've got guys that you've heard of. And so, yeah, I think they're definitely a threat. The thing that I keep coming back to, though, is Mike Locksley as their head coach. And so there's only so much respect or the fear of the turtle thing that you can give them. And I guess as he continues to build this fence around Maryland, that's great. What are you going to do with it? Right now, 2-1 with the win over Penn State. They can bask in this for a while. The question is, will they be basking too much this week and then get exposed a little?
Yeah, I think it's been a mixed bag for Maryland. I mean, it'd be hard to have 3 disparate outcomes than what they've had. They got absolutely demolished by Northwestern. It was 43-3. And then they were on their way to losing, certainly to Minnesota, down 17, and came back and forced the overtime and win on a missed extra point. And I believe I saw a stat that game was the first time in Maryland history they had a 300-yard passer, which was Tagovailoa, threw for almost 400 yards, 394 yards, as well as a 200-yard rusher. Funk, who seems like more of a straight line guy, he had 221 yards in that win over Minnesota. But he impressed me last week against Penn State, and then they just came out and demolished Penn State. It's 21-0. I want to know the last time they trailed anybody 21-0 in Beaver Stadium. I can't imagine when that would have been. Maybe in this downtime because of the Sandusky stuff, or somebody went in there and beat them pretty bad. But it's been a long time. It's been many years, I would think. So I think you have to give them credit. They're starting to come into their own, starting to believe that they are a quality football team, and that belief is worth a whole lot. They've got veteran guys who played right with Ohio State 2 years ago, and they've got guys who watched Ohio State hang 72 points on them, or 73, whatever it was last year in Columbus, and just a terrible game. I mean, it was just a complete non-event. And so I think it's kind of incumbent on them to stay in contact with Ohio State early and get this game into the second half, and then see if Tagovailoa can really pop something. Tony, to your point, how did they build that lead? It seemed kind of weird. They hit a couple of short crossing passes to Raheem Jarrett, and he took them to the house. I mean, I think I wrote it down. I didn't write down the exact yardage. I think one was 39 and one was like 62, something like that. And Penn State's defense was exposed for a lack of speed, lack of tackling, and everything else on basically the same play. And then somehow Funk basically was just a simple sweep, and he got around the edge, and nobody was there to drag him down, and he took it in the end zone, and the game's over. It's 21-0, in the first half. And so I think Ohio State is expecting a challenge, and they better be up for a challenge. I think given the way that they played in the second half, I think Ohio State's going to come out firing on all cylinders early, and it helps certainly when you have Justin Fields, Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson on your side. They scored 5 of the first 6 possessions against Rutgers and were ruthlessly efficient in that first half, over 300 yards total offense, I believe. So if we get that Ohio State team, then it could be a long day for the Turtles.
Is Anthony McFarland on this team?
No.
No? All right. Well, here I am to pour cold water on everything. I come here to bury Maryland, not to praise them. They are 108th nationally against the run, allowing 227 a game. They're middle of the pack in pass efficiency defense, and they're allowing 35.3 points per game. Yes, a lot of that's predicated on that Northwestern game. But, the truth of the matter is that, we can talk about 2018. We can talk about Penn State. That Penn State team is cashed. They are done. They are done. They are checked out. They were disinterested. The reason that they looked slow is because they didn't care in that game. And, I don't want to take everything away from Maryland. I'm not saying to bet the mortgage on Ohio State with whatever the line is, 25. I haven't looked recently. But, let's be realistic. I think that this team is a little bit closer to what we saw during its cold snap against Minnesota when it looked like the Gophers were going to come back, and a little bit closer to what we saw against Northwestern in week 1 than what we saw against a Penn State game in something that's tantamount to fool's gold. I'm not buying what I saw against Penn State as being indicative of what Maryland is going to be able to do for 60 minutes in a game or 16 minutes in a game. I do think that they have the ability for some big plays, and I'm not going to butcher their quarterback's name. I'm just going to call him TT. I think TT is very capable. I think he throws a very nice ball. I think that he's still learning. I would like Ohio State a lot bigger if they were able to generate a better pass rush, which we have not seen at this point. But I think Ohio State's going to be able to do enough things to confuse a young quarterback in this type of situation. I think that Jake Funk's numbers are very much inflated on that Minnesota game where he ran for 223 or something along those lines against the Gophers. You take that game off the table. I know we can't pick and choose stats just to make our own argument, but watch me. I'm doing it right now. Beyond that, he's about a 90-yard a game rusher beyond that, 95, maybe up to 100. Again, not taking away anything from him of saying that he's below average, but J.K. Dobbins is not walking through that door in the Maryland backfield. So, I look at their stats and use a giant grain of salt when I go through this, because I think there's some major statistical anomalies in there that are inflating their numbers, and it would be just the same as looking at Ohio State's second halves and saying that's who the Buckeyes are. I think you need to look at the whole picture, and once again, I'm here to bury Maryland, not praise them.
And when you look at all of these different stats and pick and choose or whatever, the one consistency, Maryland's defense has given up almost 36 points a game right now, and they have played Northwestern, Penn State, and Minnesota. So what is Ohio State going to do to them?
A lot.
That 2-1 splits, when you look at win-loss splits, Maryland defines the split. Talia, no touchdowns, 3 picks, under 100 yards passing against Northwestern. They can't even score a touchdown, get into the end zone during garbage time against Northwestern. Then to Kevin's point, not only did they run up the big scores against the other two, they also got throttled defensively. Sean Clifford had to throw 57 passes. So we got and Jake Funk, think Mike Allstott, think
Poor man's
Rex
Mike Allstott.
Burkhead. Not a whole lot
Alex
of wiggle
Smith,
there.
Indiana.
Oh,
Blake
wow.
Ezor, Michigan State.
There you go.
Ugh.
Just for a couple names. I don't know why I'm thinking of them.
You did much better than I did. All right. We've got a question here from Ryan. I think we already named a few of the complimentary players to Talia Tungavailoa in Jake Funk, who ran for the 221 against Minnesota. And as Kevin has said, 80 to 90 yards per game in the other two. Rakeem Jarrett, one of the few 5 stars in the Big Ten, not wearing scarlet and gray. And so he's starting to show up big. And Dante Demas is a good player, 17 catches, 2 touchdowns at wide receiver. And we saw something 2 years ago that has been indicative of Maryland, even being a bad football team, is that DJ Durkin recruited speed. They had ability in areas, and offensively, they had the skill position players. They didn't have the trigger man. They haven't had a good quarterback. Talia is going to be the best one that they've had in 10 or 15 years. And the speed on defense didn't really help them because they didn't have enough. And they would have like one really good. I'm trying to think of who the corner they had like in that Ohio State game who was highly drafted. Can't think of his name anyway. They always have like 2 guys on defense, and then everybody else is pretty bad. So they give up the 40 or 45 points a game. But Tony, that's pretty much my take on Maryland weapons against the Buckeyes.
Well, and we've seen so often in the past. I'm just looking through past years where Maryland has 6 guys who have thrown the ball, 5 guys in the season, 6 guys in the season who have thrown the ball. There have been points in the season where they're down to a linebacker playing quarterback. And if they can keep Tungavailoa healthy, that is going to be that'll keep them in more games. And after watching that first game, I was thinking, well, now you know why Alabama didn't need him around, why they let him go. And after watching like the next 2 games, you're like, oh, why would Alabama let this guy go? Of course, they've got Mac Jones and a 5-star behind him, but it seems like a good fit right now. Can they keep him healthy? They can't keep quarterbacks healthy at Maryland. So as we know, Tungavailoas have injury histories, and maybe we'll see if that plays true here in Maryland as well. But yeah, Jashawn Jones is another receiver. They've got guys, and Mike Locksley is going to continue to recruit guys. Kevin, didn't Rakeem Jarrett kind of want into the Ohio State class at the end, and maybe Ohio State was like, we don't really have room for you?
Well, there was kind of a mixture there because everybody assumed Julian Fleming was going to go to Penn State, and because of that, Ohio State was going to get Rakeem Jarrett, and then all of a sudden, Julian Fleming gets sweet on Ohio State. So there never really was a belief that Fleming and Jarrett would ever be in the same class. And while there may have been some overtures from Jarrett toward the end about wanting to see what Ohio State's interest was, I mean, do you take yet another receiver if all things work perfectly when you have a class that has Smith and Jigba and Scott and Mookie Cooper? Or do you sit there and just view it as, this is just a kid who, really is unsure of his decision, and you run the risk of maybe alienating somebody in your class only for them to say, psych, and ends up signing with Maryland anyway. So there was too much risk to really get too far down that path, in my opinion.
I did find it interesting. His first touchdown was a bad move, bad play by Lamont Wade. I'm not sure if the second one was as well, but Lamont Wade, another guy that Ohio State was interested in, and it was kind of like at the end, like, maybe not. And he was a 5-star corner in high school, and clearly he has not panned out because he is boom or bust for Penn State every single week.
Development. Yeah. It's development. Go ahead, Steve. But that was my one word there. Penn State's development just hasn't been there.
They do have some other weapons, and I think this is probably one of, if not the best offenses Ohio State is facing. If, again, it's not the Northwestern version of this, if it's more the Penn State or Minnesota version of this, where Tagovailoa gets the ball out on time and he spreads it around to various different receivers. Demas is a very good number 2 wide receiver, and Jarrett, just a freshman, is really starting to come into his own as well. Those two, Jashawn Jones, as Tony mentioned, and they've got a good backup running back as well, Isaiah Jacobs. I believe he's a freshman. I'm not sure if he's a redshirt freshman or a true freshman. My lists are kind of, I guess he's a true freshman according to what I'm looking at. And he spelled funk and made a couple nice plays last week against Penn State. So Ohio State's defense is going to need to be sound, play great assignment football,